Hello everyone, I'm Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue, and I'd like to welcome you to the sunny side of the farm. Well, hello everyone, this is Secretary Sonny Perdue again, and welcome back to the sunny side of the farm, the podcast that tells you what we're doing here at the Department of Agriculture and where we hope to go. Today we're going to talk about the safety of the American food supply, and I recently went to Europe and going again to the United Kingdom in a few weeks, and over there's a lot of myths and fears regarding the safety of U.S. food supply. So I wanted to go to the experts, and here in the United States we know how safe and tasty, wholesome our food is, but it's critical that we help the rest of the world to know that as well. Has set the record straight is Carmen Rottenberg. Carmen has been a star at USDA Food Safety Inspection Service for over 13 years, and has been a leader in our food safety and inspection service for several years. So Carmen, welcome and thanks you for here today. Let's get down to the facts.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
Here in the United States, we're facing this big problem where folks in the UK and EU are under the impression that our food, specifically our poultry, is unsafe. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's absolutely false. I think that you're right that there is this perception out there that the approach that we use to combating pathogens like Salmonella and Campylobacter is because there's some sort of substandard product coming in, but in fact the EU has even a greater problem with Salmonella than we do here. And so pathogens exist in meat and poultry, and our job as regulators to be honest brokers of that information and ensure that we're trying to drive those rates down.
Well, even the EU, their environmental safety, is it
EFSA?
EFSA?
The EFSA, that's right.
Has really declared. Tell us what they've said about the products we use.
Absolutely. I mean, when we talk about pathogen reduction treatments, the European Food Safety Authority has said that there is no public health risk associated with using pathogen reduction treatments as part of a multi-hurdle approach to really driving down rates of Salmonellosis and Campylobacter.
Well, let's talk about what we actually do here, the process here in the United States, and the facts about how safe our food is.
Yeah, really, in the United States, we set Salmonella performance standards, and we identify performance standards by looking at our Healthy People goals, which is goals that we've set across government. And we're looking at what rates of Salmonella would we need to see driving down in order to drive down the rates of illness. And we set those standards, and then industry needs to work to meet those standards. And, there's no silver bullet along in the food production chain. There is a multi-hurdle approach from the breeder flocks to the hatchery all the way to the processing plants. So this perception that the only place that producers are actually trying to combat bacterial contamination on the bird is at the processing establishment couldn't be further from the truth. The way we drive down rates of illness in the United States is by taking a multi-hurdle approach, and industry does that. They have sanitation. As you know, the poultry industry in this country is vertically integrated. What we mean by that is there are specifications that processors have for their growers for sanitation, pest control management, biosecurity. And so from the time that these chicks are hatched to when they make it to the processing plant, there's really significant controls.
The people in the EU and the politicians there in the UK kind of denigrate our poultry by calling it chlorinated chicken. That's not factually accurate, is it?
It's not factually accurate. There are certain compounds that can be used, we call them pathogen reduction treatments, that can be used on poultry in the processing of poultry. And those are processing aids. They are not additives. So there is no chlorine or peracetic acid. There's none of these compounds exist, or other organic compounds that are used by producers. That doesn't exist on the poultry when it goes to the consumer.
You used a scary word, Carmen. Peracetic acid. That sounds so dangerous. What exactly is peracetic acid?
Peracetic acid is actually just a combination of hydrogen peroxide and vinegar, which are, two household items.
That most all of us have in our cabinet somewhere at home, right?
That's correct.
Hydrogen peroxide and vinegar.
Yes, sir.
That's peracetic acid.
That's correct.
And that's what we're treating our poultry as a last step. You indicated very carefully that it's in the best interest of all these people who sell chicken to make sure it's safe all the way through, healthy and safe from the time they're hatched all the way through. It's in their benefit because they can't correct problems that originate earlier through any kind of process.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. The European Food Safety Authority over the years has even been somewhat critical of the federal inspection regime in Europe for not really looking for Salmonella and Campylobacter and identifying ways to reduce rates. Europe has a higher rate of foodborne illness than North America does, and that's something that I think Europe is moving in the direction of looking at Salmonella and Campylobacter and trying to pay attention to action plans. But in this country, we've been doing that since the late 90s.
Did I hear you say that this parasitic acid that people use, the final pathogen reduction treatment, doesn't stay on the chicken? How does that work?
Yeah, it doesn't stay on the chicken. It oxidizes, which means...
Just like I put hydrogen peroxide on my hand.
Exactly. If you get a cut at home, you pour some hydrogen peroxide on it, you see it bubbles up, it oxidizes, and it's no longer, if you were to test your skin, if you're to test poultry, and we do, if you're to test it when it comes out of the final treatment, the final wash, you would not be able to detect any parasitic acid on the product.
So if I understand, we're taking two very safe, everyday household products together, and we use them to reduce the potential for bacteria on our chicken, and it doesn't stay there. That's all correct?
That's all correct. And also, it's completely safe. There's no public health risk associated with use. And on the contrary, there actually is public health concern about Salmonella and Campylobacter, the very bacteria that these harmless compounds kill.
And the fact is, we're doing this extra step just to make sure that our poultry consumed by our families is healthy and safe for no other reason than to reduce salmonella, any potential salmonella that may have escaped.
That's correct.
Then why would the Europeans continue to denigrate that product?
Yeah, it's really hard to understand that. In this country, our poultry producers are able to produce a safe and healthy product that is nutritionally the same as the product that's produced in the European Union. And so this idea that the chicken is somehow substandard, it just couldn't be further from the truth. And anyone who walks into a regulated poultry establishment in the United States would see that that's not true.
So we're not exactly asking people just to trust us. They're international science-based standards that govern how we do things internationally so we can trade freely among one another. Is that correct?
That's correct. And, the international body that governs standards across the world is Codex. And Codex has actually also indicates that using these compounds as part of a multi-hurdle approach to combat Salmonella and Campylobacter and other bacteria is an acceptable and even advisable notion.
Not only Codex, but as we said earlier, the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, it's easy for everybody to say that, gave a positive review of that parasitic acid treatment and the supporting safe and sound methods in reducing foodborne illness. So why is it the Europeans won't trust their own food safety experts?
It's hard to say, and I think as regulators, we need to be honest brokers of the information. And when we have consumers that write to us and call us and have different kinds of preferences that they want to be in science-based policies, we tell them the science and data behind why we make our policies. And I just think the European Union can't do that with the policies that they have, and they should. They need to be honest brokers.
Well, in fact, I remember hearing about a study from back 2015 by the World Health Organization, not exactly a U.S. agency there, but the World Health Organization had some data facts about incidence of foodborne illnesses. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So the World Health Organization looked in that 2015 study at data from 2011 around the world, and they do this every so many years. And they found that the rates of foodborne illness in the U.S. and Canada were lower. That's the sub-region that's identified, are lower even than in Western Europe.
Well, in fact, we know that because of the wholesomeness of it, the healthiness of it, the poultry meat has become a popular protein. I guess maybe the most popular meat protein in the United States, and we consume a lot of it. In fact, I'm told almost twice as much of the Europeans. But then the foodborne illness from Salmonella shows a different thing. What are the facts about foodborne illnesses comparative?
Right, so if you look at the information for the Centers for Disease Control in the U.S. versus Centers for Disease Control in Europe, you see that the rates for salmonellosis are higher in the EU than they are in the United States. Not all those cases are attributable to poultry because you can get salmonellosis from other things, but it does show that this kind of multi-hurdle approach that producers use in this country is doing an effective job at driving down those rates of illness.
Okay, Carmen, you're a homer here. You work for USDA and you're just paid to say all these great things. But the fact is you've already submitted your resignation using your talents in the private sector. So you don't really have any reason to say these things about our food safety record without them being true. And you've been there. You've led these things. So can you say that on the basis of the facts of what you've seen, that the U.S. has the safest food supplies in the world?
I can say that the U.S. has the safest food supply in the world, and in addition to leading this agency for several years now, I also have 3 small children who eat poultry multiple times every week, and I feed them poultry, U.S. poultry, very confidently in the safety.
And so you have no problem serving them this U.S. food there?
No, that's right.
Well, good. Well, I think we do know that the brand of what you have led, that USDA mark of inspection, is really kind of like the gold seal there. And we appreciate that. Obviously, we want people to trust their food, and the efforts that you and your team at the Food Safety Inspection Service has been based on that trust, and the facts bear out. Well, I'm going to be traveling to the UK in a couple of weeks here, and I would love to help them understand, the people in the UK and Europe, to understand that our food is healthy and safe and affordable so we can open markets to them. But also, it's really customer choice. Don't keep our product out. Let their customers try it and see. Frankly, we know that a lot of European customers come here and brag on our food while they're in the U.S.
That is absolutely the case. Yes, sir.
We want to be able to help the European consumer know that they can trust the safety of U.S. poultry based on, frankly, the work that you and your team do and the team that will continue to do once you're gone. And we just want to encourage their governments to give their citizens choice where they can have the same access to the healthy, affordable, safe, wholesome food that our U.S. citizens indulge in. I want to thank you today. I want to thank you for over 13 years of work here. You've been a real star and a real leader in modernizing our inspection services. We're always trying to improve that process. We're never satisfied. As you know, food safety is a zero tolerance. We'd be extremely happy if there were never any kind of instance of foodborne illness. And I must say that as much poultry as U.S. people consume, including you and me, we do a pretty good job, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks, for joining us today and listening to the Sunny Side of the Farm, and we look forward to having you back on the next episode. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Sunny Side of the Farm, and I look forward to visiting you again next month.